Has Lawrence Shankland booked himself a starting spot against Haiti? There's heartbreak as injury rules Billy Gilmour out of the World Cup, but Steve Clarke calls up youngster Tyler Fletcher in his place. Hello, I'm Charlotte Cohen and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and analysis you need on Monday the 1st of June. And Scotland eventually turned on the style against Curacao.
Ryan Christie's going to step up here to try and make it 4-1, and he does! And Scotland have a fourth goal, and all of a sudden it's looking rather emphatic. 4
goals for Steve Clarke's side, but we still did it the hard way. A brace for informed Lawrence Shankland will give the manager something to think about.
Another chance for Shankland, and he scores again! What a strike that is from the new Rangers frontman. Brilliant link-up between him and Dykes, you would have to say.
Has the new Rangers striker forced his way into a starting slot? But there's heartbreak as Billy Gilmour is ruled out, with youngster Tyler Fletcher taking his seat on the plane.
He hurt himself in the tackle and then he made the decision he had to come off, so that tells you that he himself knew it wasn't right. I'd need to have a big discussion with my staff and decide the best way to go.
It's only 13 days until we play Haiti and we've got Scotland covered.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
And alongside me to talk about all of that, Kevin Thomson, former Scotland midfielder. Kevin, are you looking forward to the start of the World Cup?
Yeah, buzzing for it. Obviously looking forward to watching the boys. I think it was a shame really I'm saying a shame, it was a good thing for our perspective that obviously they went down to 10 men. But I think everybody probably would be under understanding that it'd be good to have played them against 11. It would have been a better test, probably would have had a better outcome. It would have been a closer game, it would have been more competitive. And probably learnt a bit more about the squad and the ideas moving forward, I suppose, for Steve Clarke and his staff. But no, looking forward to it. 2 young boys, so they're excited as well. I don't know if I'll be a bit of a granddad and be getting up for every game, but I'll try and catch as much as I can.
Yeah, well, that point about the Curacao game and not being able to play against 11 men is exactly what our other guest, Rory Loy, was saying. Rory, you were on Sportsound yesterday, weren't you?
Yeah, I just think, as Kevin says there, in terms of the game itself, you wanted, I think Steve Clarke said it after the game, you would rather play against 11 men. The lad Locadia as well, who got sent off, was, he was critical to the way they played. He wasn't the best technical player, but he was big, he was strong, he was physical, he took it in. It meant Bacuna and Chong could get around him, and Castamere had come on in the second half, and Dick Advocat still went with it. He sacrificed a defender and went to a back 4 and still played the 3 in midfield and the couple up front. So, it wasn't quite the same. It left a lot of space, but at the end of the day, you still need to go and win the game. And some real big positives with Finlay Curtis, and I'm delighted Shankland got a double because I'm desperate for him to start the first game. I think he's an incredible finisher, and I think against Haiti will create chances. So fingers crossed.
Do you think, Rory, that Shankland will start? Do you think Steve Clarke will do that? I mean, he's kind of given him a real head scratcher with his 2 goals.
I don't think it's a head scratcher, but Steve Clarke has got us to 3 tournaments. He knows far better than I do. I think he starts. I think if he goes with a 2, I think Steve Clarke will definitely pick Shankland. If he goes with a 1, I think it remains open for debate whether he goes with Adams or Shankland. I personally would go with Shankland. I think, given that it's 3 games in the World Cup, Haiti first, I just don't think you want to leave America with any regrets. And I think when the ball drops in the box, Lawrence Shankland is our biggest chance of coming back with 0 regrets, because he can put a half chance away, never mind a chance, and that's not taken away from anything Dykes and Adams and things like that. They're playing their trade at a high level, and they're very good players. But I just think that instinctive finishing in the box is something that we've been crying out for as a nation for a while, and Shankland's been right under our nose, and I think it's his time to shine.
Do you agree, Kevin?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's hard to get away from the points that Rory makes. I think he's the most natural finisher Scotland have probably had. He reminds me of kind of Chris Boyd-esque, where neither of them are blessed with blistering speed. I think they're both clever enough. I would argue that Boydie's a bit more have that predator instinct within the box, and Lawrence is maybe a wee bit better outside the box than what Boydie was. I think his link-up play can be really good, Lawrence, which I think will be a key factor, because I think you have to take into consideration the heat. And obviously in the first game specifically, might have more of the ball, but certainly the next two might have less, so there's going to be a lot of running, a lot of conserving energy, and the respect of when the ball turns over to try and break quick to get that chance to score. It might be slim chances. So if they fall to Lawrence, you would back yourself that he might only need one or two to put the ball in the back of the net. So I'd be surprised if the performance he put on yesterday, obviously albeit against 10 men, that he's certainly not put himself right in the pole position to get that slot.
Yeah, one of the things for Scotland in the first half when it was 11v11, Rory, didn't look wholly convincing. What do you think that was down to?
Well, in my opinion, and Tom will maybe be able to speak to this better, I think the two in midfield, and again, very good players, Gilmour and McLean, I think they struggled a little bit with the fact that Curacao played with effectively one striker. Chong and Bakuna would drop back into midfield, but when the ball turned over, they were right on top of our back four, and it exposed Suter and McKenna at times. And I think that communication there as to who's maybe tracking the runner, whether it's the midfield guys, whether it's the strikers, and it was apparent in the first goal. McKenna goes in with Locadia, and it was Chong who drops in between the defence and midfield and is able to flick it. It was an unbelievable first touch, by the way, fantastic, and it was a really good goal. I just think we looked a little bit open in the midfield area, and that's these lads haven't played together a lot often. There was so many regulars for us that are missing, so it's completely understandable. But I just felt yesterday, with the two at the back and then the two in front of them in the midfield, getting that balance was difficult at times with the way Curacao played, and it exposed us. And they weren't peppering the goal, and it was a really good individual effort from Chong. You can't take anything away from him, but down the sides at times I felt like they had a bit of an overload. It was 3v2 at times, 2v2. And as I said, I think the balance between the back two and the communication between the midfield two, maybe understandably, was just a little bit rusty.
It was obviously a great result in the end. Nice to send off with a victory, but the disappointing thing to come out of that was the injury to Billy Gilmour. He'll miss the World Cup. Now, interesting though, Kevin, Tyler Fletcher coming in, probably not the one that people would have thought, but what do you make of the decision?
Yeah, listen, I suppose it's split opinion, I suppose. Listen, if he's half as good as his dad, we're on to a right winner. But listen, I think I'm always one of these ex-players and people that like kind of looking for an outside in. There's nobody that's got better understanding of what these guys bring to the table than Steve Clarke and the staff. I know it's been a short camp. I know he's only had limited time of exposure as such to kind of get under Steve Clarke's nose, but he's done us not too bad for the selection that he's done to get us to another World Cup. So I'm kind of one of the ones that they are the next generation. These boys, Finn Curtis, the Fletchers. So I'm all for it, really. I'm a huge advocate in giving the young boys an opportunity. I think we've got a real good balance, a good blend, a lot of players within the squad that are playing at a real good level. When you think, obviously, Super John McGinn just winning a European Cup. You've got guys like Andy Robertson, you've got Kieran Tierney. There's real experience, and I think sometimes when you're away, and I might be miles off it, but that youthful enthusiasm can be a real key asset within any squad. And I'm not just saying that's just a token gesture, like put him in the squad because he's young and he's the next one, because these games are obviously massively important. You sometimes only get one chance, but I'm also in the bandwagon of, Steve Clarke knows better than the rest of us.
Yeah, it's also one of these things where, you look at young players, the likes of, as you said, Kevin, Finlay Curtis, likes of Ben Gannon-Doak, now Tyler Fletcher coming in. They've almost got nothing to lose. They're coming in and they'll want to show off and prove to everybody what they can do, Rory.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, they still, if they don't perform, have, the potential to miss out in the World Cup. But at that age, you just don't think that way. I think young Tyler Fletcher being right under Steve Clarke's nose this week has definitely helped, and credit to him, because he's obviously stepped up in training. From the things I'm reading, he's done very, very well and made a good impression. He was given a 45 minutes yesterday. I thought he was excellent, really good. So Andy Irvine, Connor Barron, Lennon Miller, they'll be disappointed, but ultimately Tyler Fletcher was there, right under the manager's nose, and he was so good that they couldn't ignore him, obviously, in training and at the game at the weekend. So, look, these young players are, as Tomo says, they're the next generation, and Steve Clarke's been criticised quite a lot about not bringing in fresh faces and not having younger players in the squad. I think there's enough now that have been exposed to it and blooded in and are part of the squad to really point to the fact that I think that myth's got to be dispelled a little bit now.
I do wonder, in terms of Lennon Miller, who you mentioned, Rory, I wonder how that's going to feel for him, Kevin, because, he was potentially one of the ones who you would have maybe thought when Gilmour was injured would go in there. He's obviously playing in Serie A. He was excellent at Motherwell. I mean, how disappointing is this going to be for him to have missed out?
Listen, I think there's more than just that, Charlotte. Really, there'll be people on the fringes. You only need to go to Ollie McBurney. Do you know what I mean? He's just been promoted to the Premier League. He's kind of openly said, I know there's more than meets the eye on that story, but I think anyone that's playing that can represent the country and has been in and around it or had opportunities, I'll be desperately disappointed.
Now as well, Tomo, the last few games in Serie A has been a really, really good. Scored against Inter, against Juve.
Aye, that's the harsh. You know better than anyone, Rory, that whether you're picked in the starting 11 at your club or you're on the bench, or when you get to these.
All about that. Being on the bench.
It's the nature of the beast, Charlotte, unfortunately. So another big talent, another player that I've got a lot of admiration for. I've loved his journey. Obviously, I played with his dad for a brief spell when I was obviously at Middlesbrough. So I've got no doubt, without knowing Lennon obviously personally, he'll be bitterly disappointed. But I think his time will come. And you don't get to this level, Charlotte, if I'm honest, and down tools and spit the dummy out, and he'll be back. I've got no doubt about that, and that's great for us as Scottish football fans. It must be brilliant for Steve Clarke that sometimes over the years the squad's almost picked itself, but now there's competition for places there, which can only bode well for the future.
What about at the back then, Rory? It doesn't really look like we've maybe got that settled centre-back partnership.
Possibly not, and it's difficult. International football is difficult because each camp to the next, you've got injuries, you've got players missing through suspensions and loads of different reasons as to why you can't have that continuation of the same back four. I do think that with the three games are so different at the World Cup, and I was asked yesterday to put forward my starting 11 for Haiti, which would look very different against Morocco, to be totally honest with you. I think yesterday the goal we conceded, it wasn't great, but as I alluded to before, Souttar's not played a lot in the last month or two, and he's not played a lot alongside Scott McKenna. So there are reasons for that, and that's why we have these games. That's why the game was arranged yesterday. It's a friendly to try and get on top of these issues and address them before they become issues when it matters. So I don't really have, too much negativity towards the fact we conceded the goal yesterday, but looking towards the first game, it'll be interesting to see who he picks. But I think the game in New Jersey against Bolivia will maybe point us in a more clearer direction as to what Steve Clarke's thinking as to whether he goes with 1 up, 2 up, 4 at the back, 5 at the back. So I think that'll become clearer in the next week.
Yeah, that's going to be really interesting. I wonder as well, Kevin, about the goalkeeping position. Craig Gordon starting in goals against Curacao. Saw Liam Kelly come on, make a few good saves. But do you think it'll be Angus Gunn who starts that opener against Haiti?
I think so. Just kind of adding on a wee bit on the back of Rory's one about the back line. I think the back line's suited more by a 5, if I'm honest, Charlotte. I think it protects the 3 centre-backs, whichever way that's going to go. I'm a big advocate, and if you've got a fit Andy Robertson and a fit Kieran Tierney, you get them in the team. I don't think Kieran Tierney's suited playing as a left side centre-back in a back 4. I think he's more suited if he is going to play that inside Robertson and allow Robbo that licence to kind of roam forward a wee bit. I think it would be more beneficial playing the back 5. I think Souttar and McKenna having that cover and someone that number 6 role so important to kind of protect that back 3. Maybe different in the first game because we might have a lot of the ball, but traditionally the next games that are coming up, hopefully, and progression would probably mean a wee bit more suffering without the ball. So I think that back five would be really important against some of these speedy nations. The goalkeeper one for me, I think Liam Kelly is probably the one that would miss out if you were tossing a coin between the other two. Craig Gordon's obviously not played a lot. I think without knowing Steve Clarke's opinion on yesterday with Gunn not coming on the pitch suggests to me that it was getting minutes into Craig Gordon and Liam Kelly to give them that opportunity with taking no risks really with Gunn. I think he's a stick on to start the first game and potentially play them all. But listen, I might be wrong because Craig Gordon will certainly be there punching and scrapping to make sure he can try and get in that starting 11. But if I was a betting man, I think I'd put my money on Gunn starting.
Rory, you touched on Lawrence Shankland and how he's definitely forced his way into contention, if nothing else. But is there anyone else who you thought against Curacao has kind of given Steve Clarke something to think about for that opener?
I don't think Finlay Curtis will start the game, but from my experience, your opportunity comes from getting 15 minutes here and there, and then you do enough to maybe get the last half hour, and then a half you start a game. I think he's built his way up in Steve Clarke's mind to if we're struggling in a game or we need a goal. I think he's elevated himself to being right at the forefront of Steve Clarke's mind when we need to make a substitution. Whether that's the first sub, second sub, third sub, I'm not quite sure. But if it's not going our way, and it does go with Gannon Doak and John McGinn on the sides, Gannon Doak, I think he's a young player as well. I don't expect him to start all 3 games. But I do think that Finlay Curtis has now put himself right in the picture to get a good chunk of minutes at the World Cup, depending on how the games play out. Out with that, Charlotte, I think the team having qualified for the World Cup and the players that were missing yesterday, McTominay, McGinn, etc., will come back in. I don't see anything that's going to get us off our seats and talking about it, and it's going to be a huge decision from Clarke that surprises us all. I really don't. The only thing that I can take from yesterday is that I personally would like to see Shankland start, and I think Curtis will be right at the forefront of Steve Clarke's mind when it comes to substitutions.
Kevin, who would you want to see alongside Shankland if he were to start with 2 up top against Haiti in the opener?
Listen, the first job that I had, Charlotte, was taking Finn Curtis when he was 12. So, great boy. Delighted to watch his career progress. Probably a wee bit of a bronze stroke silver medal mentality as a young Rangers player. He was never probably one that was at the top of the group. Never really one of the diamonds as such, but a humble, real hard-working lad. And I'm delighted for him because it shows, and it should show the next generations that dedication, hard work. Of course, you need the talent, but also a lot of people probably thought, he's maybe not going to go to Killie, he's maybe not going to play, he's not going to do this, but brave enough to go out on loan and take his chance. And like Rory says, I totally agree in the respect that he's probably propelled himself up the ladder to the degree where if he's not going to start, he'll certainly be one of the ones when Steve Clarke looks over his shoulder. He's no there just filling up the numbers now. He's because there will be squad players that might actually not even get on the pitch. I certainly don't think that'll be the case for Finn Curtis.
I mean, his rise has been pretty meteoric in the last 6 months since he went to Killie. I mean, you hear the way Neil McCann talks about him. You heard the way Neil McCann was talking to him after the game. He seems to have kind of almost captured every Scotland fan with how well he's been doing, Kevin.
Listen, he's a breath of fresh air, Charlotte, he really is. And as I say, it should give a lot of people hope. And that's not downgrading Finn's ability or his talent, but having that endeavour, that desire, that drive as an individual, he's got that in abundance. And I think sometimes a lot of young players, when they're at the big clubs, get a bit of comfort in staying there. And Finn's been brave enough to go and play. And sometimes when you have that big loan deal when you're a young boy and you end up going, when you think of Josh McPake going on loan to Dundee and not really playing and getting sent back, Alex Lowry going to Hearts, playing a wee bit and then getting sent back. Finn Curtis has went there, he's played a variety of different positions. I'm only going off the word on the street that I've heard from different people, but I know that anyway. An unbelievable kid to work with, a coach's dream. And he's now reaping the rewards of that. And I'm absolutely delighted for him. And I think when you think of, Ben Doak, that excitement, that bit off the cuff, that wee bit of imagination, that unpredictability in the front line, we've now got that not just on one side, we've now got in Finn Curtis as well.
Yeah, it's been good to see a lot of the young players kind of getting those vital minutes. I think Scotland ended the game against Curacao with 3 teenagers on the pitch. And Rory, one of the things that people have been critical of Steve Clarke for in the past is his insistence on sticking with some of, you know, his go-to guys and not really giving the young players a chance. But he did that against Curacao. He's brought Tyler Fletcher into the World Cup squad now. This is very promising for us for the future.
That is promising, but without labouring the point, because he is the standout at the moment, Finlay Curtis, he's not really given him an option. He was that good at Kilmarnock. He scored goals, he's set up goals, his endeavour, his attitude. I went on loan at 19 to Dunfermline in a really difficult first team environment where they were going for the league. And I played my fair share of games there. We just missed it. Well, we ended up missing out by a distance because St John's were good. But, then going back to Rangers, don't get me wrong, Rangers was a different beast when I was there. You had Stevie Davis, Charlie Adam, Pedro Mendes, Barry Ferguson, Tomo, Boyd, Miller. It was extremely, extremely difficult as a young lad to try and get any minutes at all. But Finlay Curtis has now put himself in a position where he's going back to Rangers for me as potentially, starting the season next year if he can have a good World Cup. So I don't think he's given Steve Clarke much of a choice but to pick him. He's been so good that he can't be ignored. And then Tyler Fletcher's come in this week. I do think he's had the advantage over the others that I mentioned is to being right under the nose of Steve Clarke. And I think if you're seeing him every day and you're watching him, it's very difficult if he's performing well to go another way. So credit to him. But your overall point's right, Charlotte, and I touched on it earlier. Like the players that are coming through under Steve Clarke and the ones that have been given exposure now, hopefully over the next 4 years, of Steve Clarke's tenure as Scotland manager, hopefully that conveyor belt continues.
Yeah, I do wonder, Kevin, now that Steve Clarke's future is settled and we know he's going to be the boss and he knows he's going to be the boss for the next 4 years, do you think that's maybe encouraged him to look at more youth and give some of the younger players more opportunities?
Possibly. Listen, I think Steve Clarke will read the room as well. I think the boys that have done so well for him, there's always going to be that loyalty. It's just the way it is. It's what football is. Some people might disagree with it. Some people might have a different opinion, but you could argue it's quite similar to club football. When managers are doing well and certain players get to a certain age of their career, they might nick an year's contract, they might keep them around the building, they might just keep them for the culture, for the environment, to pass on experience. Obviously, in a business sense, that has to work club level, but international, I think Steve Clarke's been very consistent in the boys that he's had, and the harsh reality is, performances, maybe if you were picking the bones out of them, have maybe not been the most eccentric or the most pleasing on the eye at times, but he finds ways of winning. And he's got a group of boys that you hardly see anyone pull out. Everybody's desperate to get in the squad. The leaders in there are playing at a real high level. They've got total respect for the next again generations that are coming through. I think he's created a brilliant environment, Charlotte. I don't think there's any surprise that we're now starting to see an influx drip feeding the next ones coming in. I was going to say something on the Finn Curtis thing there because I was at an event last night and I was saying that if he has a good World Cup, he might actually not play for Rangers. Because it wouldn't surprise me if he has a good World Cup. And I mean this in a good way because obviously I want to see him do really well for Rangers. And he certainly wouldn't be moving unless it was for big bucks. But if he has a good World Cup, it wouldn't surprise me if the big clubs start circling.
Yeah, that's a great point. Obviously, Scotland jetted off to the States on Sunday. Bolivia game, as we touched on, next Saturday. Rory, what do you think Steve Clarke will be looking for from that game?
I suppose you can overthink these things. I would imagine he'll go closer to what he'll start the Haiti game with, but then, again, this is probably me overthinking. It'll be silly to think that Haiti won't have scouts and probably Haiti's manager there as well. So how much do you actually want to give away? But ultimately, you need to at some point put the 11 on the pitch or close to the 11 on the pitch, formation, etc., that you're going to go with in the first game. And you've just got to back yourself that whether Haiti are watching or not, that you're good enough to go and beat them, which, let's be honest about it, we should be. It's not easy. And they're ranked very closely to Curacao, so I think they're 82nd and 83rd in the world. So we've got a little taste of what to expect, but I think he'll be looking for a little bit more cohesion than they had at the weekend, because I know he wasn't happy. He said it in his interview afterwards with the first half an hour, 45 minutes. But again, I'll say it, that's why these games are played, to iron out creases and wee things that can maybe maybe do better. So I think he'll be looking for a little bit more tempo and a little bit more improvement from the weekend. And I think you'll see minutes in the legs of the powerhouses that we've got on our side, John McGinn, Scott McTominay, etc. So I think you will want to wrap them in cotton wool. I don't think we'll be getting any more than 45 minutes. But after that, it's all eyes on the opener.
That is all we've got time for. Many thanks to Kevin and Rory, and thank you for listening. Remember, we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day, so make sure you don't miss out. Subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on in your phone. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll catch you again very soon.
It's petty, it's ill-informed.
Are President Trump's cuts having an adverse effect on research?
It's pandemonium.
What number's that in the periodic table?
PD, number 47. I don't know.
I've done the shooting clays before. The longer you do it, the shorter obviously it gets.
When Craig said there he'd been shooting the clays, I imagined him out a back line. Somebody's washing,
William Shatner, his secretary, contacted me to say, when Bill has a question now and again, can he contact you? And then one time he called me up and he wanted to know, David, what is a photon? I'm thinking, this is incredible. Captain Kirk wants to know what a photon is,
I once met a guy who referred to a globe as a bomb app. A bomb app.
Look at the bomb app.
What we normally do is spin the bomb app and we see where we go on holiday.
The Off the Ball podcast, available every Monday on BBC Sounds.